Hey, what is up guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. It's time to bring back my wishlist series to the channel. This is a series that I kicked off last month with the first episode being themed around GT500 and GT300 machinery from the world of Super GT. In today's video for episode number 2, this is all going to be themed around GT3 machines. I've chosen 10 GT3 machines that I would absolutely love to see to come to Gran Turismo 7, as well as future iterations of the franchise. So what are the rules for the GT3 entries that I have chosen here? Well, it's very easy. It's all about Group GT3 cars that's been running since 2005 all the way until the present day. There is no fantasy vehicles in here. There is no future releases in here as well. It has to be a car that is at least running up to now in the present day, or has run at some point under the Group GT3 rules. So there won't be any kind of, offshoot GT3 machines or any fantasy ones that you might kind of see in the likes of the VGT Group 3s and such like that are very closely based on GT3 regulations. It has to be an official Group 3 GT3 machine that has ran at some point since 2005 until the present day. The final rule is that there's only one entry per manufacturer. So with that being said and the rules and the format explained, let's jump in to entry number 1, which is a bit of a classic for me personally, and that is the Dodge Viper Competition Coupe GT3. So yes, there was many different versions of the Competition Coupe. I'm mainly focusing on the GT3 group car. In my opinion, one of the best looking GT3 machines ever to grace a racetrack, and maybe one of my all-time favorite looking racing cars. Now, in terms of the overall specs of this thing, it's absolutely ridiculous, especially for that time. But one thing that really stands out to me is that big grunting and growling V10 engine note. It's absolutely iconic, and in my opinion, this is definitely a must-have for GT7. Listen to this. So let's move on from a classic GT3 to one of the most up-to-date and modern GT3 cars. From American all the way over to Italian, this one for me is an absolute must and definitely makes sense considering the model that we currently have in gaming Group 3 is massively outdated, being around about 11 years old. Obviously I'm talking about Ferrari, and obviously I'm talking about the Ferrari 296 GT3, Ferrari's most modern attempt at a GT3 machine, and in my opinion perhaps one of the most stunning and beautiful machines that has ever graced a race circuit. This thing for me is absolutely amazing. It surely has to be a must for any respectable game that really wants to base a racing group around GT3 machines. Now for me, the 296, again, like I mentioned, is not only absolutely amazing to look at, it also sounds absolutely stunning as well. For me, this would make sense considering just how old the current Ferrari is, clocking in at around about 11 years like I mentioned. It is massively outdated, and considering they run the manufacturers series with that thing, it has to be really kind of updated at this point, and what better way than the 296. So let's keep with the modern theme and let's go with another big manufacturer that currently has a very outdated Group 3 or GT3 machine in Gran Turismo 7. Obviously I'm talking about McLaren. Now the current vehicle that they run in Gran Turismo 7 is approaching that 10-year mark. It is currently 9 years old, I believe, being a 2015 spec and model. So for me, the McLaren 720S and either its Evo form or even the original model is absolutely a must. Again, it falls in the same category just like Ferrari, where this is a huge manufacturer that again, when they're doing esports competitions, looks really bizarre considering just how outdated that machine really is in terms of being on track. It just doesn't make sense for a competition like the manufacturers, which aims to kind of show off these Group 3 machines, and then you kind of see them and they are way behind what their current spec is. The 720S, in my opinion as well, is an absolute stunner of a machine. It's big, it's bold, it's aggressive, and for me it's just a step up from what we currently have in game. So let's move on to number 4. So we've had two modern GT3 machines in a row, so let's go back in time once again and let's go for something that none of you guys probably expected. For me, this has to be the Morgan Aero 8 GT3. I fondly remember this from sort of the mid to late kind of 2000s on the kind of European and British GT circuit. It was an absolute sight to behold, considering the Morgan Aero 8 probably isn't what you think of when you think GT3 machines, but this thing was absolutely incredible. It also sounded absolutely amazing as well, and I know this is probably the longest shot of this entire list, but for me this would be a very special edition, and well, it's a very special car just to behold. If you don't know anything about this car, please do some searching up about this car. It's incredible. So let's move back to modern GT3 machines, and probably the most, I guess, modern one of the bunch. They're definitely the newest one that I'm aware of anyway. Obviously, again, a very outdated model. In fact, two models already exist in Gran Turismo 7 in the Group 3 category, but for me, this has to be the Aston Martin Vantage GT3 from 2024. This is the most modern GT3 machine on this entire list, and it's perhaps one of the most absolutely visually stunning ones as well. I really like this design. Now, it's definitely a bit Marmite. I know there's some people out there that just really didn't like this when they first saw it, but for me, I think it looks absolutely incredible. Even without a livery on, you can really see the ridiculous amount of aero in this car. I think it looks very aggressive, very visually striking, very in your face. You know exactly what brand it's coming from. So for me, the Aston Martin Vantage GT3 from 2024 is an absolute must. Now, I know this would probably be a much later edition than any of the others, just considering the sheer amount of time it does take them to model an in-game car, and obviously with this one being the latest of the bunch. So let's move on to the next vehicle on this list. So let's move over to Porsche next. This is an obvious one. Most of you guys will probably think that I'm going to talk about this car here, the Porsche 911 GT3R. Now, I would, and I kind of am, but let's go one step above. If you don't know much about this car, a lot of racing games or modern racing games do feature this one, obviously based on the 992 generation. It's an absolute must for any GT racing game, but for me, the one that I really do want is this absolute gem of a racing car. This is the Porsche 911 GT3R Rennsport, an absolutely ridiculous take on their GT3 machine. The aero on this thing, the wide body on it, I think it looks absolutely incredible. It might just be one of my favorite Porsches of all time just to look at. Just imagine this as GT3 without all the restrictions. Oh yeah, also it sounds absolutely incredible. So we've had a classic American GT machine, so let's go over to a couple of the modern iterations. Number one is going to be the Ford Mustang GT3. This is a very recent addition, obviously Ford targeting the brand new GT3 regulations, obviously with the removal of the likes of GTE and such. For me, I don't typically think of the United States when it comes to GT machines, but some of these, I guess, updated versions or new vehicles that they're kind of popping in from both Ford and Chevrolet are absolute must for any GT racing game. The first round of the WEC season this season, when I saw that bright blue Ford Mustang on track, it was an absolute eye-catching moment, and I realized that, do you know what, it's not just a big bulky car that's kind of turned into a GT machine, it really is a full-blown purpose-built machine, and I absolutely loved it as soon as I saw it. So for me, this is definitely just a must for any racing game that features GT machines. Let's stick with the United States as well for the next pick. Again, another updated machine that is aiming to tackle the new regulations. This is obviously the Chevrolet Corvette GT3R updated. Obviously, the C8 version has had a race car previously. This one now aims to be updated to tackle those new regulations around GT3. So there again, it's just a must, to be totally honest. The C8 race car has been been lacking ever since we got the road car version in the game in December 2022. So for me, this is an absolute must-have for Gran Turismo. It would just totally make sense. Don't just have the road version in the game, put the race version in as well, and again, update those very outdated machines. The C7 that is currently running is a very old model, and it's not even the official one from that time period, which is a massive shame. So absolutely, I would love to see the official C8 GT3R in game. So let's go back to another staple of the current GT3 grid. This is the BMW M4 GT3. This one has graced the GT3 world for around about, I want to say maybe 2-3 years tops. It basically, if you've been to any GT3 racing as of late, then you've probably seen one of these things. Now, in my opinion, I am not a huge fan of the styling of current day BMWs. I think the grille for me is a complete off-put and probably one of the ugliest things to ever grace a car. Now, it totally lets the design down, but again, I understand this is an absolute staple of current modern day GT3 racing, and that is why it's on this list. Okay, whilst I'm not a massive fan of the design personally, it is a successful GT3 machine. The most recent one that I was there for was the British GT Championship at Donington, where this thing took the overall. So next up, and the final entry on this list, let's again go for something that you might not necessarily expect. This is the Bentley Continental GT3. Now for me, I don't mind whether we get the more updated version or we get the original one. All I remember is that when this thing first rolled around on the tracks in around about 2015, it was a really surprising one, to be totally honest. I don't think anybody expected Bentley to kind of come up with turning a, rather large, massive luxury vehicle into a full-blown GT3 race car, but they did, and for me, it's one of the best GT3 machines to ever grace a racetrack. It looks absolutely incredible, it's a proven racing machine, and well, it sounds absolutely amazing as well. So for me, it is an absolute must-have to Gran Turismo, and let's be honest, we do need Bentley in the game. So there we go, that is 10 GT3 machines that I would absolutely love to see in Gran Turismo 7 and future iterations of the franchise. Again, I tried to keep it to one entry per manufacturer and also do a mix of, I guess, some what would be classed as classic GT3 machines at this point, as well as some of the more obvious and modern iterations. Let me know what GT3 machines you would love to see in the game, and let me know your thoughts down below. A massive thank you for watching today's video, and a big thank you to all of my channel members who are on screen now. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your weekend. Take care, guys. Peace.